Ma'am, you're the speaker? The words sliced through the clinking glasses and polite laughter like a gunshot in a chapel. Every head in the ballroom turned. The orchestra stopped mid-note. A server froze, still holding a tray of untouched champagne. My mother's wineglass slipped from her fingers, shattering quietly against the marble floor. My sister, Celeste, turned pale, her mouth still slightly open from whatever political anecdote she'd been reciting to a senator 2 tables over. And me? I didn't blink. I stood in the centre of the screen behind them, broadcast in real time from a conference 3 miles away. The Global Intelligence Summit, held at the Capitol Grand Hall. The CIA director himself had just stood up, saluted, and asked that question. Ma'am, you're the speaker? He already knew the answer. The whole room did now. I watched the ripple of disbelief flood through the crowd like an invisible wave. The same people who moments earlier had laughed when my sister introduced me as just a desk worker at Langley were now scrambling to reconcile that image with the one before them, me in a sleek black suit, medals gleaming under the lights, stepping up to the podium. They hadn't seen me for who I was, not for decades, but tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about visibility, truth, and walking through the front door after a lifetime of being told to use the back. I adjusted the mic, let the silence hold. Then I spoke. My name is Evelyn Carter. You may not remember it, but you will. For as long as I can remember, I was the quiet one, the in-between, the middle daughter of the Carter family, wedged between 2 prodigies, shadowed by their spotlight. Celeste was the crown jewel, of course. Perfect scores, perfect teeth, perfect press releases. She was the one my parents paraded at every fundraiser and gala, the face of the family legacy in politics. She had charm, she had timing, she had everything that looked good in pictures. And David was our golden boy in uniform, Marine, then Special Forces. He died in the line of duty 10 years ago. They turned his funeral into a national photo op. My father gave a eulogy that ended up on the evening news. Celeste cried in pearls. My mother arranged the flowers to match the flag. Me? I stood in the back. Not in uniform. Mine didn't officially exist. I worked in a division of the CIA that didn't allow public acknowledgement. No names, no medals, no cameras. Only scars and silence. I wasn't invited to speak. I wasn't even listed in the obituary. I was family. But not enough to count. I still remember the first time I told them I'd been recruited. I was 22. My father was sipping brandy in the library, eyes half closed, listening to a jazz record on vinyl. I stood there, fresh out of Quantico, heart racing, ready to tell him I'd made it, that I'd been handpicked. He didn't look up. He just said, "So you're quitting?" Like it was a disappointment, not an achievement. My mother, seated beside him, tapped her teacup against the saucer and delivered her line like it was scripted. Not everyone is meant to be exceptional, Evelyn. That sentence lodged itself into my spine like a blade. For years, I told myself they didn't understand, that it was easier to ignore my work because it made them uncomfortable. But over time, I realized it wasn't discomfort, it was erasure. You can't celebrate what you pretend doesn't exist. They didn't want a daughter in the shadows. They wanted a daughter who could pose beside senators and smile for photo ops. And when I refused to be that woman, they edited me out, literally. I used to keep a box of mementos under my bed, tiny pieces of my life no one else knew existed. A cracked compass from Baghdad, a matchbook from a safe house in Tripoli, a blood-stained ID badge from a journalist I pulled out of a collapsed tunnel in Kandahar. None of it made it to the family mantle. That space was reserved for Celeste's Harvard diploma, framed next to a photo of her shaking hands with the governor. David's medals lined the hallway. My father's congressional plaques took up an entire wall. My face, my name, not a trace. The silence wasn't passive. It was policy. Operation Starlight changed me. It was supposed to be clean. Enter, extract a diplomat's child and disappear. But the intel was wrong. The building was booby-trapped. There were children, 3 of them, huddled in a room that was rigged to blow. I made a choice that day. I broke protocol and went in alone. We got the kids out. I took the hit, shrapnel down my left side, 3rd-degree burns, and a torn shoulder from dragging the youngest through rubble. But we lost David. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He volunteered last minute. He died covering our exit. His last words were a joke, something about how I always had to do things the hard way. When I came back stateside, I carried his flag with me, folded triangle, wool, heavy with meaning, and then nothing. No press, no medals, just a quiet debrief in a windowless room and a firm reminder, this operation never happened. Weeks later, I called home. My father answered. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask about David. He asked, "Are you still doing that nameless job of yours? When are you going to get a real career, Evelyn?" I didn't answer. I hung up. That night, I stitched my own wound in a motel bathroom mirror. My hands were shaking. My shoulder was slick with blood. There was no backup, no applause, no family waiting at the door. Just me. Me and that damned flag. There's a certain kind of grief that doesn't come from death, but from being erased while you're still alive. It crept in slowly over the years, every time a holiday passed without a call, every time I saw family photos posted online with captions like "the whole gang," and I wasn't in them. Every time I mailed birthday cards that were never acknowledged, or sent flowers on Mother's Day, only to hear Celeste take credit for them during brunch. At first, I tried to believe the best, that they were busy, that they just didn't know what to say, that maybe, just maybe, they were proud in secret, but the truth? They weren't proud. They were ashamed. I was a complication, an inconvenience they didn't know how to present. Not military enough to be their war hero, not political enough to be part of the family brand, not glamorous enough for the Christmas newsletter, just Evelyn, the one who disappeared into the grey. There was a breaking point. A party Celeste threw in DC. Something about an environmental bill and a new endorsement. She sent me a text, not an invitation. "You can stop by if you're in town. Wear something polished." I went, and I wish I hadn't. She introduced me as my older sister. She does something in admin at Langley, I think. Her tone said it all. Polite distance wrapped in a smile. The crowd chuckled. Someone offered me a glass of rosé and said, "Must be nice not having to deal with politics." I remember stepping out onto her balcony that night, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance, and whispering to no one, "You're still here, and that's enough." But it wasn't, not anymore. That night, I stopped being a ghost. I didn't need their pride, but I was done letting them build their legacy on my silence. Done letting them step over my service like it was some inconvenient truth. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. Or maybe just to be real again. And that meant walking back into the world they tried so hard to lock me out of, with my name intact. The call came on a Thursday morning, the kind where the air already feels heavy before the sun's even up. I was sipping black coffee in my apartment, the kind with too many locks and too few windows, when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. That alone made my spine stiffen. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a year. I answered on instinct, not intention. "Evelyn," she said, clipped and neutral, like a secretary confirming a time slot. "Celeste's promotion gala is next Saturday. You should come. Not, 'We'd love to see you,' or 'Your sister wants you there.' Just instructions. Cold, formal, surgical. Please don't wear one of your practical outfits," she added, as if the word itself was distasteful. "And avoid mentioning any of your little government adventures. This is a political event. We don't want confusion. I swallowed the heat building in my throat and answered the only way I knew wouldn't provoke more. I'll be there. No thanks. No small talk. She hung up like she was finishing a business call. 5 minutes later, a digital invitation arrived in my inbox. The email subject line read, "The Honourable Celeste Carter, Public Service Award Gala." My name wasn't listed among the family members. There was no assigned seat at the main table. Just a vague note, "General family guest, dinner service provided." I stared at it for a long time, longer than I should have. It wasn't that I cared about the table assignment. It was what it meant, where they placed me when they thought no one was watching. That afternoon, my father called. He almost never called unless there was an agenda. "Evelyn," he said, voice suddenly warm, too warm. "Good to hear your voice. Listen, do you still have contacts with Senator Blake's people?" I didn't respond. "He's the swing vote on the transportation bill Celeste is championing. It would mean a lot to the family if we could smooth things out. Just a call. That's all we ask." That's all. Just call in a favour from a man I once pulled out of a convoy ambush in Aleppo while they were hosting cocktail fundraisers in Georgetown. I told him I'd see what I could do. I lied. Again. 3 days later, another call came. This time, it was Celeste. Her voice was saccharine, rehearsed, like she was smiling in front of someone important. "Evelyn, just checking in," she said too brightly. "Heard you're coming, that's good." Mom's relieved. I didn't answer right away. She filled the silence. "I know we don't always see eye to eye, but this night is really important to me, to the family. Just, please don't make it awkward, okay?" "Awkward?" I asked, calmly. "You know what I mean," she said, softer now. "There'll be press, funders, cabinet members. I just need everything to go smoothly." I could hear the tremble behind her words, the way she tiptoed around the real fear that I might do something to remind people I existed. "I'm not here to embarrass you, Celeste," I said, "but I also won't disappear just because you'd prefer I did." There was a pause. She exhaled, tight and low. "I'm not the enemy here, Evelyn." "Then stop acting like one." She hung up. That evening I opened the drawer where I kept the flag, the one from David's coffin, folded precisely, still wrapped in the same cloth I carried it home in. I hadn't touched it in months, maybe years, but something about that call, about all of it, made me realize this night wouldn't just be another humiliation to swallow. This time, I wasn't showing up to fade into a corner. I was done apologizing for surviving what they never had the courage to face. Done making myself small to protect their illusions. Let them have their tables, their headlines, their curated family smiles. I had my own story now, and I was ready to speak. I arrived early, though I wasn't expected to. The invitation said 6. I came at 5:30, out of habit. Years in intelligence taught me to survey the field before stepping into it. But this wasn't a war zone, it was my childhood home, or what was left of it. The brick facade looked the same, but the warmth was long gone. As instructed, I didn't use the front door. The side entrance near the kitchen was propped open with a brick. I stepped in and was greeted not by a smile or a hello, but by the scent of lobster puffs and lemon polish. A server glanced at me, mistaking me for catering. I didn't correct him. In the kitchen stood my mother, Margaret Carter, immaculate as always, in a navy cashmere dress and pearls that never moved, even when she did. She turned, saw me, and nodded without a hint of affection. "Good," she said. "You're here." Not how was your drive or it's good to see you, just that. An inventory check. "Place your gift on the side table near the stairs," she continued, already moving to adjust a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "And please don't draw attention before the speeches. Celeste's team has worked very hard on this." "I'll be invisible," I said, more truth than sarcasm. She didn't hear me, or pretended not to. I stepped out into the main room. The house shimmered with money and influence, chandeliers glowing, polished floors reflecting heels and handshakes. Laughter floated through the air like perfume. My father stood near the fireplace, drink in hand, talking with a state representative. He saw me, offered a polite nod, one he might have given a distant colleague, not his daughter. Then I saw her. Celeste descended the staircase like royalty, dressed in deep emerald satin, camera ready. Her smile was already aimed at the crowd. "Oh, there you are," she called across the room, gesturing toward me like she was introducing a minor character in a play. "Everyone, this is my sister Evelyn. She works for the government. Some sort of desk role at Langley, I think." Laughter followed, gentle but sharpened by tone. I smiled, tight, practiced, the kind of smile that hides bullet wounds and broken ribs. Because this wasn't new, this was just another mission. Except this time, I wasn't here to survive it. I slipped away from the crowd after the second glass of champagne I didn't drink. I didn't belong there, never had. I wandered down the hallway toward the rear terrace, hoping for air or escape. And that's when I saw it. The flag, David's flag, the one folded with military precision after they lowered him into the ground, the one I had carried across continents, kept pressed against my ribs through grief and nightmares. It sat crumpled on the floor beside the terrace door, wedged under it like a makeshift doorstop. At first I thought I was wrong, that it was a replica or something decorative, but I knew that wool. I knew the crease that split the star near the edge, the hand-stitched hem where I'd once repaired a tear myself. This wasn't a replica. It was real. I bent down, picked it up slowly, like lifting a body from rubble. The fabric was cold, gritty with dust. My stomach turned, but I held the rage in. I clutched it to my chest and stood there, invisible again, while guests laughed over crab cakes and champagne. I walked straight to my father's library. The room hadn't changed. Mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes no one actually read. A fireplace flickered weakly under a marble mantel where political awards gleamed. Photos were everywhere. Celeste posing with senators, David in dress blues, my father shaking hands with foreign dignitaries. And then I saw the family portrait, or what was left of it. It was the photo we took the summer before I left for Quantico, our last as a whole family. Celeste in white, David grinning, my parents poised as ever. But I wasn't in it. I used to be. I remembered standing on the left, next to David, hand on his shoulder. Now that part of the photo had been cleanly cropped. Only a sliver of grass remained where I'd stood. Aunt Carol's voice echoed from years ago. "Oh, honey, your mother just bought a smaller frame." You didn't fit. Didn't fit. I stared at that tiny green patch of grass and felt the same chill I did the day I walked into my first covert briefing and realized no one would ever clap for the work I was about to do. They hadn't forgotten me. They had removed me, deliberately, permanently, but tonight they would remember. The flag stayed pressed against my chest long after I left the library. I kept walking through side hallways and past shadowed corners, invisible by design. I needed air, clarity, distance. But most of all, I needed control. Because something had shifted. Weeks earlier, I'd received a message flagged for internal review, an article draft, not yet published, titled Operation Starlight, Reckless Endangerment, or Rogue Heroism. The language was clinical, carefully toxic. It hinted at insubordination, implied that I had endangered fellow agents. There was no name, of course, there never was, but the details were surgical and accurate, too accurate. Only a few people knew the specifics of that op. Fewer still knew how close we came to dying that night, and one of them, was Celeste's old college roommate, a DC communications strategist, media-trained, politically connected, the kind of woman who smiled with her eyes while cutting your legs out from under you. I'd met her once, briefly, during a fundraiser Celeste dragged me to years ago. She'd called me the mysterious Carter sister and clinked her glass against mine like we were equals. We weren't. She was a gossip with a PR firm. I was a shadow with blood on my boots. I traced the leak, quietly, carefully. The pattern led back to someone very close to the Carter campaign. I didn't confront Celeste right away. I wanted to believe she didn't know. But then came the second article. That one included direct quotes, not mine, not public. Things I had said in private agency debriefs, statements classified under internal review. Statements only family could have known because I had once, in a moment of misplaced trust, confided them to her. I read the piece in silence, then I shut my laptop. No rage, no tears, just something cold and clean cutting through me. This wasn't just neglect anymore. It wasn't erasure. It was sabotage, and it was going to cost her more than a headline. I folded the flag and tucked it back into my coat, straightened my shoulders, walked back toward the glow of the gala like a soldier returning to the front. If they wanted a ghost, I'd show them what one looked like when it stopped haunting and started hunting. She found me outside by the garden wall, right where the string lights faded into darkness. High heels clicked cautiously against stone, the kind of approach that says, I'm here to fix this, but only if it doesn't get messy. She held a half-empty glass of Cabernet, eyes glassy but sharp. I came to talk, Celeste said. Just hear me out. I said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a bridge she didn't dare cross. I know things have been tense, she continued, tone soft like she was already writing the post-confrontation apology email in her head. But I want to make it right. I raised an eyebrow. She pulled a folded envelope from her clutch, handed it to me. I've been speaking to my team, she said. There's an opening for a domestic security advisor at the department. Good pay, stability, full pension track. You wouldn't have to live in the shadows anymore. I didn't open the envelope, just stared at her. You want me at a desk, I said flatly. She hesitated, then smiled tightly. Something respectable, not dangerous, not anonymous. Her version of a peace offering was a demotion in disguise, repackaged shame. You think I need saving, I said. I think you've been hurt, she replied, and maybe you've convinced yourself that pain equals purpose, but it doesn't have to be like this, Evelyn. You don't have to keep proving something. I stepped closer. I'm not proving anything, I said. I already did. Her face tightened. I didn't leak anything, she said suddenly, quickly. I didn't ask, I replied, but the twitch in her jaw was answer enough. She exhaled, long and slow, and for the first time all night, the polish cracked. You always had this martyr complex, she muttered. Like silence made you noble, but the truth is you disappeared because it was easier than failing in the open. My voice was calm, too calm. And you clung to visibility like it made you real, like applause meant worth. She flinched, just slightly, then turned. If you don't want the job, don't blame me, she said. I don't, I replied. I blame myself for ever expecting you to see me. She walked off without another word, disappearing into the hum of power and curated legacy, and I stood there holding her envelope like a loaded weapon. I didn't want her job. I wanted something far more dangerous. I wanted the truth, and I was done asking permission to tell it. The next morning I received the call. Unknown number, encrypted line. I answered without hesitation. Carter, I said, voice clear. Ms. Carter, a woman replied, clipped, professional. "This is Deputy Director Lynn from the agency. We'd like you to speak at the Global Intelligence Summit next week. Closed session." Then, the keynote. I paused. Not because I was surprised. It had been building, quietly, since the declassified mention of Operation Starlight in last quarter's internal review. Whispers had started. Quiet respect. The kind that doesn't show up on plaques, but shifts the room when you walk in. "You're sure?" I asked. "Positive," she said. "The director himself requested you. He said it's time your story was heard. You'd be representing those who never get podiums." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'll be there." That night, while Celeste posted polished rehearsal videos of her upcoming speech, "Public service is a family tradition," I sat on the floor of my apartment with three things: my suit, my notes, and David's flag. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her ruined. I needed the space to speak without being edited, without being cropped from the frame. The irony wasn't lost on me. Celeste was hosting her gala at the exact time the Intelligence Summit would begin, just 3 miles apart. Her audience, donors, lobbyists, reporters, mine, ambassadors, intelligence chiefs, war zone medics, and Black Ops veterans who still couldn't list their missions on a resume. The contrast was almost poetic. 2 sisters, 2 stages, one clinging to applause, the other about to take a microphone for the first time in her life. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post, didn't warn. Let them laugh one more time. Let them introduce me as the paper pusher from Langley. They'd find out soon enough. When the director stood up and asked on global broadcast, "Ma'am, you're the speaker," and the whole room turned, and the silence hit like thunder, because ghosts don't stay buried forever. Some of us come back with a voice. Celeste took the stage at exactly 7:03 p.m, right on schedule. Her emerald gown shimmered under the chandeliers, her hair pulled into a flawless twist, every movement designed to signal poise and power. The crowd leaned in with instinctive reverence. Politicians, donors, old money elites, they all watched her like she was already halfway to the Senate. "Good evening," she began, voice smooth, perfectly measured. "Tonight is not just about me. It's about legacy, service, family." Applause followed, warm and immediate. Cameras flashed. My mother sat front and centre, hands clasped with pride, so carefully arranged it could have been sculpted. My father, in his tuxedo and senator's cufflinks, watched like a director overseeing his final act. I stood unnoticed in the far back corner, near a server station, black suit, no name tag, no seat, invisible the way they preferred me. Celeste continued, "I was raised in a home where public service wasn't a choice. It was a birthright. My father, a statesman, my mother, the spine of our family, my late brother, a soldier." She paused, just enough to let the room murmur in respectful silence. "And yes, even my sister, who works quietly behind the scenes in a government role that, well, no one really talks about." Polite laughter rippled again. She smiled like she'd just performed a gracious favour, acknowledging the inconvenient presence of a sibling no one quite knew what to do with. And that's when it happened. The screens behind her, tall LED panels rotating soft focus family photos, flickered once. Then again. Then the image changed, no warning. Gone were the childhood beach photos and charity headshots. Now on every screen in the ballroom appeared the seal of the Central Intelligence Agency. The audience stilled, unsure whether it was part of the presentation. Then a new image came. Me. Not the Evelyn they remembered in loose sweaters and muted heels, but a photo from just moments ago, taken at the Intelligence Summit. I was standing behind a podium flanked by brass and stars, medals clipped to my lapel, the CIA director at my side, Gasps rippled like wind through tall grass. Celeste froze mid-sentence. The feed had gone live. I didn't set it up. I didn't need to. The director had arranged it himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice echoed from the ballroom speakers, crisp and deliberate. "We now go live to the keynote speaker at the Global Intelligence Summit, Agent Evelyn Carter." All heads turned. Celeste didn't move. Neither did my parents. No one said a word. And then came the sentence that cracked the silence in two. "Ma'am, you're the speaker?" The lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly as the live broadcast from the Intelligence Summit took over the screens. At the podium, I adjusted the microphone with steady hands. The room on my side, a cavernous chamber filled with agents, generals, and operatives in suits and scars, was silent, reverent. But I wasn't speaking to them. I was speaking to the ones who had tried for years to pretend I was invisible. I glanced briefly at the camera lens, knowing exactly where the signal was going, knowing exactly who was watching. "My name is Evelyn Carter," I began. "For 20 years I served in silence, missions with no names, sacrifices without medals. I operated in shadows so others could live in the light. I could see the ballroom audience on the split screen behind the camera, faces frozen, my mother's lips pressed so tightly they disappeared. My father stared at the floor. Celeste hadn't moved. I was taught that service meant humility, that doing the hard thing quietly was nobler than asking to be seen. I paused, just for a beat. But humility is not the same as erasure. Silence is not the same as shame. A murmur moved through the crowd behind me. In the gala hall, someone knocked over a wine glass. No one noticed. For years, I watched others build careers on applause while I collected scars no one would see. I buried friends. I carried flags. I stitched my own wounds in motel bathrooms while the people who claimed to love me posted family portraits I'd been cropped out of. I let that sit there. I wanted them to feel it, not just hear it. I don't tell this story for vengeance. I don't need apologies. What I need, what I demand, is recognition. For every silent operative, every unseen protector, every woman told to make herself small so others could shine brighter. I closed the folder in front of me. Tonight, I step into the light not because I crave it, but because I earned it. Applause erupted in the summit hall, loud, rising, unfiltered. But I didn't hear it. My eyes were on the silent ballroom. Celeste stood like stone, her mouth open, but no words came. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I simply existed, fully, undeniably, and at last, on my terms. And then I finished with a single line, meant only for them. "You didn't forget me. You removed me, but I'm still here, and now you'll remember." I didn't hear from them that night. No calls, no messages, just silence, curiously louder than anything I'd said on stage. 3 days later, I returned to the house in PTOAC one last time, not for closure, not for revenge, for the flag. It was raining, soft and steady, the kind of grey drizzle that blurred the edges of everything. I wore my field jacket, creased, weathered, mine, no makeup, no mask. When I walked in, they were all there. My mother in her usual chair, fingers laced tight on her lap. My father standing, arms folded, like a man still trying to control a narrative already lost. And Celeste, crumpled on the armrest, mascara smudged, her polish cracked. They'd seen the broadcast. They'd heard every word, but none of them looked at me like they understood it. Not yet. My father broke first. "You destroyed everything," he said. His voice was low, flat. "No," I replied. "You did. I just turned on the lights." My mother shifted. Her lips parted. Evelyn, I didn't know. I looked at her, not cruelly, not kindly, just clearly. You didn't want to know. I stepped toward the table where someone had folded David's flag again, too tightly, wrong corners. I fixed it with care, like I'd done 100 times before. You didn't protect her, I said, not looking at Celeste. You enabled her. You let her weaponize silence. That's not strength, that's cowardice in pearls. Celeste's head dropped. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't hate you, I said, but I can't have you in my life. I placed the house key on the table, cold, final. This is the last time I'll be here. And I walked out. The marble floor echoed with each step like it was releasing ghosts with every footfall. I didn't look back. Outside, the rain touched my face like grace. Freedom didn't feel loud or triumphant. It felt quiet. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was walking toward one. I moved into the cabin in the Blue Ridge 2 months later. No signal, no noise, no one calling me by the wrong title. The porch faced east, where the sun arrived like a promise, and every evening smelled like pine, ash, and the freedom of being forgotten by the wrong people. I didn't vanish, I just chose a new kind of visibility. The agency offered me a new role, stateside, training and mentoring the next wave of operatives, women like me, hungry and quiet, brilliant in ways the world didn't know how to applaud. I taught them how to move unseen, how to survive without glory, but also how not to disappear, how to hold the line without losing themselves to it. Some days they'd ask me about the old days, about Operation Starlight, about what it felt like to be erased. And I'd tell them the truth, not the sanitized version, but the one with silence, betrayal, and the long road back to a voice. I'd tell them what no one told me, that you can lose everything and still walk away with your name, that sometimes survival is louder than applause. I kept David's flag in a wooden box by the fire, not as a symbol of death anymore, but as a reminder of choices made under fire, his and mine. When I couldn't sleep, I'd unfold it gently, let the wool rest across my knees like a memory I was finally strong enough to hold without breaking. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Celeste's, just one page, folded twice. Inside was a transfer order. She was leaving DC voluntarily. No press release, no speech. At the bottom she wrote, "I'm learning to find my own light. Thank you for showing me the dark." I didn't cry, I didn't smile. I folded the letter quietly and tucked it into the back of a journal I no longer needed to write in. Peace, I realized, doesn't always arrive with answers. Sometimes it's just the absence of needing to ask them anymore. Sometimes I wonder what my younger self would think if she saw me now. Barefoot on a porch, sipping black coffee while the fog rolls through the mountains like a secret. No spotlight, no cameras, just quiet. She'd probably think I gave up. And then she'd see the burn scars on my shoulder, the stack of handwritten letters from new recruits thanking me for telling the truth, the folded flag on the mantel, not as a relic, but as a badge of clarity, and maybe, just maybe, she'd understand. I didn't walk away from the fight. I just stopped fighting for a seat at a table I never wanted to sit at in the first place. One night I recorded a story, not for an audience, not for the agency, just for the archive. A file labelled Carter, Evelyn, Personal Debrief, Unclassified. I spoke plainly. No edits, no code names. I told the whole thing. From the back door of my mother's house to the stage where they finally said my name out loud. And when I finished, I didn't save it for the world. I saved it for the one girl who would stumble across it years from now. The one being told to sit still, smile small, stay quiet. the one whose bravery wouldn't fit in a frame. I want her to know that survival is a form of success, that quiet does not mean weak, and that you don't need permission to matter. Before I signed off, I looked into the lens and said one last thing. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, remember this. Your story doesn't start the day they see you. It starts the day you decide to be seen. Then I shut the laptop, let the screen fade to black, and stepped outside. The wind carried pine and silence. The moonlight touched my scars like old friends. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be called on. I had already spoken, and the world had listened.